You've heard of Superman, you've heard of Batman, you've heard of Wolverine, but have you heard of Ragman? One of my favorite characters, and in this video, I'm going over issues 1, 2, and 3 of the original series. Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to the video. My name is Bernie Gonzalez. I am a comic book creator. I write comics, I draw comics, and I think if you ask any creator, comic book creator or otherwise, it's always fun to work on your own characters, to build your own universes. But, you know, sometimes it's kind of fun just to work in somebody else's sandbox, to play with somebody else's toys. And in this case, I wanted to highlight one of my favorite characters that are out there. And it's not Superman, it's not Batman, it's not Wolverine, it's Ragman. And I know what you're thinking, who's Ragman? So figured I'd take this video to kind of go over one of the characters that, yep, I found many years ago and did not know that this many years later, I'd still have a good attachment to. So let's go over who Ragman is. All right, so Ragman's first appearance, well, you're looking at it, came out September 1976, and it's Ragman #1. Ragman, also known as the tatterdemalion of justice. And right up there they have the tatterdemalion. Not really sure what that means. Essentially, as you can kind of get the sense, there's a lot of rags involved here. The creators of the book are writer Robert Krieger and artist Joe Kubert. And I'm sure if you've dealt in the world of comics, you've probably heard the Kubert name before, either by Joe Kubert, the famous school, or his sons Adam and Andy. But this one is the father, Joe Kubert. So who is Ragman? So it's a superhero that mixes in, you know, kind of like your typical vigilante running around, actually ironically enough, in the streets of Gotham, and it mixes Jewish folklore. And he wears a suit of souls that, well, collects souls and allows him to have the skills of the souls that he collects. The name of the main character is Rory Regan, and we'll kind of get into that, but I wanted to highlight the first series here. So you've got Ragman 1, Ragman 2, Ragman 3, Ragman 4, and Ragman 5. And I think for the purposes of this one, we'll focus on 1, 2, and 3. Good thing about these comics, at least from this era, a lot of them were standalone. So unlike comics now, you really do have this large narrative that you're following. You can't just kind of jump into one issue and jump out. You can't pick them up at the newsstand like you would before. I mean, when I grew up looking at comics, I would go to Woolworth, Adventure, or Walgreens, and I would pick up a comic, and, you know, I wouldn't have to go back and look at all of them. But as you get into the 90s, into the present day, there is more of this building. You're telling a bigger story and different types of storytelling. So cool thing about these comics of this era, and particularly Ragman, you could go in, buy one issue, and get a full story. So let's dig in. All right, let's kind of talk about the cover first here. So Joe Kubert, again, art chores on this, and this is actually kind of a similar composition to Enemy Ace, another character that Kubert is very well known for, and kind of talk about it as we go along here. Kubert on the art chores here, you've got the story of a lot of mobsters are involved in this, so we don't get costume villains, but we do get a costume main hero, and the idea is that he works in essentially the slums of Gotham, and it has that feeling of mean streets, the warriors, you know, that sort of 1970s New York with graffiti on the walls, and the idea that poverty has stricken the streets, except in this case it's Gotham. So you have this mobster, gives a bouncing ball to this girl. Turns out it's not just a ball, it's an explosive. And then as the mobsters try to make their escape and lament the fact that this poor girl got stuck in the middle and she is a victim, they shoot into the shadows, but little do they know that they've actually gotten some shots off at Ragman. So the art chores, as you can see here, are by Redondo Studio. Cover art by Joe Kubert. Redondo Studio, who is that? Well, from the research I was able to do, Redondo is actually Nestor Redondo and his brother. the two of them were part of this influx in the 1970s where you had a lot of Filipino artists that were being brought in, and from what I could find, primarily first into DC, and then they would start working with some other publishers, including Marvel. But the ability to bring in good talent that had worked on other stories like Bible stories, other like Sherlock Holmes and other stories like that, Arthurian legends, and you were able to bring them in, and not only could they already knew how to draw a comic book page, but on top of that, their rates were cheaper. So instead of republishing old material, you had editors at DC who went to the Philippines, who befriended some artists there, including Nestor Redondo, and were able to have them start working on characters, including Ragman, for a significantly lower page rate than they were paying American artists. So allowed them to not only get more books, more product on the shelf, but also not pay nearly as much as they might have, and also get new material out there. So Redondo Studio does the art chores on this one, and again, just amazing composition. If this does not let you know why I fell in love with Ragman, I don't know what will. I'm an 80s kid, but I grew up really, kind of digging my teeth into comics into the 90s with a lot of other people, with the explosion of comics, the hologram covers, the creation of Image, and you could almost feel this is kind of like a proto Spawn, like the origins of Spawn, with the the ragged cape, the shadows. There were just things here that I discovered at the same time I was buying Spawn, that I was buying Ghost Rider, The Terror, some of those Midnight Sun type books, and then going backwards into back issue bins and finding things like this for a deal, for nickel, for not a nickel, sorry, for 25 cents, maybe 50 cents, but realizing, okay, well, here I am buying Spawn for $1.50, $1.95, and here are these old comics that, yeah, they look old, but wow, this character design is just amazing, and I wanted to see something like this, like someone like a Stephen Platt or a McFarlane drawing this, and they were basically doing that. But here's Joe Kubert in the 1970s, here's Nestor Redondo drawing this, and thinking, wow, this is so amazing that I just have to find out more about this character. So great composition on here. We just see as Ragman's chasing these guys over the roof lines here of Gotham, and we just get some really nice, pretty establishing shots of the city. Again, just really well rendered. Love the expressionness in the eyes, and you can see that Redondo, the two of them, and who knows which of the brothers was working on a specific page or panel, but the fact that they took time to render the different textures, the different patterns on these rags, and I love the lithe, athletic build that they gave Ragman. He's not bulky, he's not too slender like Spider-Man, but you get the feeling that he's athletic and he can move around. And then of course when you have a cape that's just flowing behind him like that, it's just great drawing, great composition, fun to draw. Again, here we get a little bit more into Ragman moving around, some stilted motions here, but look at this, the acrobatic positioning, just he kind of like a yoga pose at this point while he's trying to avoid all this gunfire from these mobsters. And again, just good composition, keeping the motion of that panel very thin, but also it feels like you're moving this way, you're moving along with Ragman, and he's following this mobster who's about to fall over, and Ragman, attempting to be the hero, grabs him by the shirt there, but it tears. And again, just like the cover, Joe Kubert, and who knows which came first. Did Joe Kubert draw this knowing that this scene was going to happen, and then Redondo Studios recreate it, or vice versa? Did they do this, and then when he saw this page, he thought, well, you know what, this is a great composition. Maybe this was an homage to his own Enemy Ace that the Redondo Studios was doing, and then he creates it, but with some ink wash, with a little bit more detail, and very much obviously the Kubert style. Who knows? But love these thin panels. Just gives you that sense of falling, and a bit of that haunted feeling in Ragman's face, where instead of doing this all in black, which probably would have been an approach I would have gone with, instead you have these lines. But I don't know, it just gives you the sense that he's feeling shame, guilt that he was unable to save this mobster, this criminal, and in the end ends up with the falling body on the ground, but unable to stop this criminal, this mobster, from being able to fall and from dying. Get some shots of Ragman. Love that. Almost feels like it could be sunset, and you've got the shadows coming along. Again, love this panel. So much expressed so subtly. The shadow of the building just hugging the edge of the gutter there just gives you enough to know that there is height involved here. And I love the fact that in some of these you have this little insert panel, you have these caption boxes along the way, and this one they just had that little bit of artistic, just to change it up a little bit. You have the actual dialogue from the caption in the top of the panel there. Just really well done. I love that. So good. And the fact that Ragman has been hurt, and they talk about the dark drops of blood left behind on the roof tell their crimson tale. A lot of purple prose here. What's purple prose? A lot of this dialogue that's just really heavy-handed. It's almost unnecessary. I don't even know how to write that way. I mean, you're really kind of giving a reader their money's worth by putting a lot of words, a lot of captions on the page. But the storytelling is clear enough that this character has made their way to this place, Rags and Tatters. You can kind of get the sense that that's probably where Ragman lives. But some of the purple prose, as heavy-handed as it is, effective. The mass eye holes are bottomless pits of joy and sorrow, of heaven and hell. It's dramatic, but you gotta admit, it's a little poetic. Then you get the shot here of our hero, Rory Regan, who's a Vietnam vet and has come back home to take over his dad's Rags and Tatters store. And outside of a pawn shop and, kind of taking care of his dad's business, you have the people from the neighborhood who come in, the violin player who tries to sell his violin because he can't pay for new strings, the boy who sells the baseball that he caught in the bleachers of the stadium, the woman whose bird flew away and tries to sell the cage. And in each instance, Rory, our hero, not only as we're kind of getting the sense here that he's going to be Ragman, but also is a hero to the neighborhood. And he's not willing to, he'll take their stuff, but he's going to hold it, and he gives them money so that they can get by. All right, so now we get the front of the page here. Little exposition, but I do like it when they make exposition a part of the story first instead of having a moment where it really stops the storytelling. And in this case, they just give us enough so that we can read the headline. We saw what happened. Those were in the pages before. But now we meet Betty, I think Betty or Bet, who's the romantic interest, and she's a reporter. So it makes sense that, she took some of these pictures. Betberg, there we go. She wrote the story, so we know that there's this masked hero that's out there, a ragman that's fighting the gunmen. But Rory at the same time, Bet doesn't understand. Get through some of these awesome ads here, and then we have Rory thinking about why he's doing this, why he's taking on this mantle, and remembering his father and him when they were young, going through the streets on horseback, no less, and they were collecting rags and junk from people, and Rory realizing that his dad was not ashamed of what he was doing, that these people were throwing things at them, throwing garbage at them, but just like the dad says, they're only taking that out on me because they've been stepped on, and there's nothing lower than a junk man. So a lot of empathy there by Rory Regan Sr. and Rory learning these life lessons. So you can kind of get a sense why there's, again, a lot of stuff here that's just kind of, prototypical hero type stuff. Laying it on thick here with the junkyard. You've got Rory who's checking in on his dad and his dad's friends, and they're having a few drinks in the back of the junkyard. And along the way, we get a little bit of a history behind them. One of them, seems like they were all part of a circus, a traveling circus of some sort. So one of them who has Samson-like strength and picks up Rory like it's not a big deal. One of them here who has who took down the heavyweight champ, so obviously he's a good fighter. And then you've got the acrobatic here who's doing a handstand. So why are these people here? I mean, come on. If you've read a superhero comic, you kind of know where this is going. They're going to be involved in some place. And I do remember the first time I read this, it reminded me of Doc Savage. And if that one's a little bit older, Doc Savage was a pulp hero in the vein of like the Shadow or the Phantom. And Doc Savage had this group of friends who, he would rely on, and they all had their strengths. You maybe had like a getaway driver, a muscle man, a strong man, maybe a tech guy. And in the present day, Mike Mignola has kind of built that similar prototype with Lobster Johnson. And in this case, that's what I thought they were kind of doing, where you saw Rory meeting his dad's friends, and maybe he was going to bring them into his vigilante world, and they were going to help out. But in this case, drama's ensuing. Got a gunshot coming in out of nowhere. So now that they've introduced Rory's dad's friends in the junkyard, we have the drama begins now. We have the two mobsters who show up, and they're looking for their money. They're not taking any BS, so they start shooting at Rory's dad and the friends. In the shooting, the friends end up getting caught in these electrical charges, into these electrical wires, and they're starting to get electrocuted. Feels a little downplayed here. It feels like there should be a little bit more Z's there in the sound effects. Meanwhile, Rory is witnessing this entire thing. Love the blue here, just really subdued, but very, very nice. Rory goes in and throws in a tire so that way they can ground the electrical charge. So little Bill Nye Science Guy knowledge there. But then we see that while he's trying to help them, he himself gets electrocuted. And we have kind of like a daisy chain here of electrocution. And now on this page here, I think this is one of the pages where I was able to find the original inks and pencils for it. So that way, kind of cool to compare it from the finished page to the penciled inked page. But we see that Rory's dad's friends and Rory's dad have been electrocuted. Love the line work here. It's open. It just gives you the sense that, something tragic has happened. They've been burnt. They've been electrocuted, which just has to be something really hard to draw, because I can't imagine how I would draw someone having been the victim of electrocution. And it just seems like they were able to do that perfectly here. Rory, realizing that, he's lost everyone, goes inside to call the police, just to see that his dad had left a note on the phone saying, "Happy birthday, here's something that someone brought in, the strange costume." And now we get our introduction to the origin of Ragman. Hero shot, a little bit subdued considering all the tragedy that's happening on the same page, but love this origin. I mean, love this right here. I mean, just the rendering on it, the inking, love it. The fact that the eyes are not even visible, they're just sunk in the entire face. Just very atmospheric. It's great. And go through issues 2 and 3 here a bit briefly, because I don't want to do kind of like a beat by beat, but again, we get another Kubert cover. Ragman, love that shot here. There's something about his physique in the ways that Neil Adams, rest in peace, who created that sort of lithe, athletic build for Batman. Something really interesting in the way that they render Ragman in these pages. But again, the face, that sort of underneath darkness, where you could tell that the nose, the mask is tight underneath the nose, just looks really, really neat. Art, again, by Redondo Studio. And I'll kind of flip through this one quickly. Get mobsters. They're driving. They've got this girl in there. Ragman is able to stop them, save the girl. She thanks them with a kiss. Cars crashed. Love this page here. It's just really cool shots of Ragman putting aside the suit. And this is a case where, because of the patterns, you can have a lot of fun as an artist in rendering what these patterns would look like. Kind of skimping on the patterns there. Maybe there was a deadline. It's kind of suggested, but love the face there. Makes his way into the junkyard. We've got the mobster there doing his best Kingpin impression, but this time in pink. And now we see that they are looking for something. And we've got the helicopter there that looks straight out of the Batman 66. That looks like the Joker, maybe like Super Friends or Challenger the Super Friends helicopter. We've got Ragman protecting the girl from this helicopter. Ragman able to take the tire off the helicopter, throws it into the blades, takes him down. And again, Opal, who's the woman that he saved earlier, and yet again is able to he's able to save her and survives from all of this mob mafia action. So you can see very street level action. We don't get a Batman like rogues gallery. Another great Joe Kubert cover here, issue number 3, and we see that again, mobsters. They've got these two folks. They hang them, which is nuts. And then we have this here little kid who's the witness, has a cat, and love this page here. Just the composition. Love that shot right here. I mean, look at that. I mean, you can just imagine Todd McFarlane, whether he saw this or not, but that just feels like a Spawn panel. It has that feeling of Ragman almost coming out of the bricks, coming out of the dark alley shadows to protect this kid before he decides to, go off on these mobsters. Takes the kid, realizes that the kid is blind. He also cannot speak. So the kid is communicating to him how he can identify these mobsters who committed that crime. So now you've got Ragman, Rory, who's protecting the kid, so that way he doesn't fight harm. And we've got like this one-page origin with kind of a, I don't know, feels like a bit of a cheat in the background with the silhouette. Feels like that could have been very interesting. The fact that Ragman's suit is made of patterns feels like that's what I would have done, is put a ton of different patterns in the back, like a patch quilt, kind of putting together the origin of who Rory, of who Ragman is. Would have been a more interesting aesthetic there. But nevertheless, if you just pick this issue up, then at least you have an idea who this new hero is by being able to read his one-page origin. Go back to Bet, our journalist, who visits Rory at the Rags and Tatters store. Meanwhile, mobsters continuing to be the center of the villainous attention here in the issue, going after Rory, going after Ragman. And then we get Bet, who is with the kid in a kind of like a, there we go, like a Chinatown exotic parade, as they call it there. And then the mobsters trying to find this kid, make sure that they get rid of him so that he can't identify them. But turns out Ragman is there. We get the mobster with a kind of like a wheelchair with machine guns in it because, comics, why not, right? Got the cat that saves the day. We get the mobster that gets thrown into the glass from his motorized wheelchair, and the end. So this is, I know you're probably thinking, well, I don't know, Bernie, I don't know why this exactly is inspiring, but again, there's just something about the aesthetic, there's something about the look of Ragman that I really always loved. These early stories, street level, on the other tracks, other side of the tracks of Gotham, where you can just imagine, kind of like the slums or in the Nolanverse, the Narrows. That's where I always kind of feel Ragman lived. So something always interesting about the stories and certainly his look. So in another episode, in another video, I'll have to go over issues 4 and 5. And then also, I think it'd be kind of fun talking about Batman to cover this issue of Brave and the Bold. One of the few times early on in his comics career that at least certainly I saw Ragman having a crossover with a classic character as Batman, in some ways maybe legitimizing who Ragman was for an audience that was only familiar with Ragman from these few issues, and then of course the Kubert covers that are just timeless. But I'll have to go through some of these because they're kind of neat. So thanks for checking out the video, and I would definitely say if you have a chance, check out Ragman. Yep, they're a product of their time. They're a little dated, but they're fun comics, and I don't think you'll be disappointed.
We'll be right back.